Is Mario Wonder really a good game, or will it get bad now that everyone knows the tricks that made the level so interesting? If you watch this video, you're almost guaranteed to never be able to understand the true scope of Mario Wonder. To do that, you would need to know how a non-gamer sees Mario Wonder. I will be honest with you, I too am someone who plays his fair share of video games, and that is exactly why I'm doing this. I didn't even expect to make a video on Mario Wonder, as I don't have any way to record footage from the Switch. But after seeing how my mother of all people comes up to me, say, "Did you know there is a new Mario game?" Me saying I already got it, just to be, "Why are you hiding it from me?" Making clear she wanted to play this was simply mind-blowing to me. My mother did have a SNES, NES, N64 and Game Boy that I now own, but outside of effectively interactive movies with VR games, did she not play video games for about 2 decades. So that she would not only want to play video games, but also from nothing but seeing an ad on television for the first time was sure something. Now, that in itself is already just such a huge win for Nintendo, as it shows just how good Mario Wonder looks, that people who show little interest in games jump up to play it, and that is the first thing that we who play video games could never understand, this ability to create interest in those who don't have any. This, however, is small fry compared to once those people start playing. Just a question to you, when you started playing Mario Wonder, or just in general, how do you start playing a game? What do you think you do? As I can tell you, you do far more complicated things than you could ever imagine. You probably will pick a character, let's say Patch, so that you get that Patch game early. You run through the intro, most likely skipping the dialogue, as let's be real, who cares about any reasoning for what is happening in a jump and run, and go to the first level. Now, what if I told you already did 2 things that are abnormal? One of which more of a technicality, while the other is seen as so basic that you forget that it is highly complex and basically does not exist for the people not engaged with games. Let me give you how my mother started the game to compare those 2 things. The first thing, of course, is the character select screen. And do any of the things here stick out? Do not think about something you already knew from other material over the game. Only the 1-minute trailer that is on TV. This menu is quite cryptic, right? I mean, it's so hard to understand what is going on here that it is almost overwhelming. That was not your reaction, but I told you to remove all your knowledge of the game. So why are you able to understand the screen you have never seen before from a game you know nothing about? Are you some super genius, or what is going on here? Let's break it down what I mean. I was next to her when she started, and the first thing she said was, "Oh no, I have to choose my character." Understandable, as different characters play differently. Just that isn't how this works. As I was next to her, I could simply say that all characters play the same, but the last 5 don't take damage and can't use power-ups. Simple and easy to understand. Wrong. I just let her pick Yoshi and went away. Not like I would watch her the entire time, as she did play for 3 days straight, non-stop Mario Wonder. I only realized what was going on when I went back to see what she was doing. And well, the first thing she asked was, "What are those bubbles?" The bubbles in question being the power-ups. She did not understand what cannot use power-ups meant. Those words made no sense to her, despite sounding so simple. And we are talking about someone, albeit years ago, did play games to some degree. That was, to begin with, the only reason she was able to pop up the inventory items, as on the Game Boy there are only 2 buttons. The A button, the jump button, was in this game on default set to the inventory. That meant this quote-unquote trivial to understand menu for us was not clear enough with someone next to her saying what was shown on screen. It's as if I were to put you in the middle of Kyrgyzstan and say go. All you can really do is brute force it, as you cannot understand what people say, and the text shown has no meaning to you. Let's put that aside and go to the real inhuman task that only hyper-evolved aliens would be able to perform. You run through the intro? What monstrous ability do you have to do that? Being able to press the run button while you move, and all of that without even looking at what you are doing. I want to make clear, I'm not talking about someone who never touched electronics or is completely out of experience. Like basically every job these days does she work on a PC using a keyboard for years. A controller is not a keyboard, and moving a character is not the same as typing in a document and having to fight against the ever-changing way of how Windows tries to make things work well. We have gotten to a point where we use controllers so intuitively that you could probably at times even struggle to say what you are actually doing. It's as if you had to describe seeing to a blind person. No matter what you say, it all will be on the base that you see, and a blind person could never understand. At least my mother knew running existed, but using it was another thing. Throughout watching her, whenever she used running, did she first look on the controller to find the button, and at one point even said, I always have to press so many buttons for a running jump, to give context. So now I ask you again, what do you think of the basic things you did at the beginning of Mario Wonder or any other game you played for the first time? A basic thing. Let's talk about why you will never fully comprehend why Mario Wonder is such an amazing game without an outsider. And this is coming from someone who 100%ed it day one and thought, will I like this when playing for a second time? Or do I now have exhausted all the interesting? Gamers cannot understand this no matter how much they think about it, because they have already thought too much about it to ever go back to the point before they thought of games. I already said it, but these menus are cryptic. There's nothing telling you what they mean, so it is just some symbols with numbers and letters next to them, because they have been used from the start. Did at one point just everyone learn this language without even realizing, just like a baby would learn a language without even knowing what that meant, and developers took that for granted. Side note, that is why some games are so hard to understand. The devs think these things are basic, that everyone will get it no problem, but in reality you have no chance of knowing what is going on. And in terms of menu, I want to drop another great line. Saving is so complicated. It was literally just pressing the menu button plus and then go to save game. That is complicated if you didn't know. Not even talking about character or badge selection. My mother really did not understand what it meant to equip badges. Whenever the game asked you after obtaining one, just press yes and get out of this annoying menu. Only when someone is there who knows better is there even a reason to put thought into this, in the form of asking that person what to do. This platformer game's menu and HUD is cryptic, but whatever, it's a platformer. You don't need a menu for that one, especially now that time is no longer a thing, so you don't need to see the clock to know how much time you have. What I also already mentioned was how running does not exist, as pressing the running button and controlling your character is brutally hard. I actually already knew that. A long while ago, when I was trying to make my own Mario game in Mario Maker, did I design the first world with that fact in mind, that running should not be needed to do anything, and that includes decrease jumping height. I did then let it be tested by a friend who was more into shooting games, and she did not simply go through these levels without issue. There weren't many enemies or pits, but they sure all found a way to get her. With how many Mario challenges are there, why is there no Mario but I cannot run challenge yet? I am telling you, without running these games get a lot harder. You jump lower while also having less momentum, so getting over pits or on top of enemies is far less lenient than you are used to. I saw that so often when my mother got barely over stuff, but while seeing that I became to realize another thing. We are just too used to quickly get how a character will move when we do stuff, that we don't even know anymore how it feels not to know that. This is not just about not knowing what jumps are possible, there is so much more behind that. If you don't know what is doable, you also become far more hesitant, which leads to not moving in full force, which then again cuts down how far you can get, but that then shows you how dangerous these jumps are, making you even more hesitant. There is no real punishment to failing, but the human psyche doesn't want to fail, so we act accordingly. When we play games a lot, we stop thinking that way, as we learn that this is part of the course. But have you ever tried to play like there is some horrendous punishment whenever you fail? As if you did, will you suddenly play like another person, even if how you usually play should cause never any issues with these challenges you face. Now remove even knowing that you can do these things, and you are where non-gamers are. All of this leads to the thing I simply glanced over, that my mother played for 3 days straight, while not touching games for decades. Despite all these things that seemingly remove all the fun of games, did she decide to play as much as she can, even through parts where she failed a lot. One of those parts being the first Bowser Jr. fight. You probably think that fight is way too easy. Why can't we get for once a good boss fight in a Mario game? And first of all, do I have to say, huh? This is a platformer, not Dark Souls. Why are you expecting bosses to begin with? It's not like they take away level space. They just are added on at the end of a full level. But also these bosses are so hard. How could anyone beat them? You probably think they're easy because Bowser Jr. is easy to avoid and all you need to do is hop 4 times on his head. But like, how can you avoid something that is fast, unpredictable and needs almost frame perfect jumps to get over and call that easy? Remember that non-gamers can't run? That honey phase without running reduces your jump height so much that jumping over Junior becomes a challenge in general. Combine that with not being able to judge what you can do and his fast movement, and this fight is suddenly a challenge. If they did any more than that, this fight would just be a frustrating game enders to new players. Nintendo is and always will be a family console, so they need to design the beating of the main game around that fact. This gives the conflicting ideologies of making things beatable for beginners that the hardcore fanbase can still enjoy. And for that, all I have to ask is if you had fun playing Mario Wonder, as my mother clearly had when she played for days without break. The last small thing I want to add is that badges are more awesome than you think. At some point did my mother swap to the exclamation mark block badge, and from what I saw are these blocks played so perfectly. They really did know what should have some blocks, never completely removing the danger, but also being always there when needed. Safety bounds would follow a similar role for that, so don't complain about things that were never intended for you. All of this rambling is just me saying Mario Wonder is better than you could ever know, because you can't appreciate it for what it isn't. It has the appeal that makes generally not the interested people want to play it, knows how to build around that audience primarily, and somehow still be this game that every gamer calls an instant masterpiece without even understanding the other side of the equation, or even knowing that it exists. Finally, one thing that Nintendo definitely would hate to hear, but the game engine of Mario Wonder is just insane for modding. There are so many wide things that engine can do that didn't exist before, all for just being a one-time gag of one singular level. There is that one level that had to just for one one-up. The need to introduce that entities can travel between screens and be safe. You can force change badges mid-level and swap as often as you want. Wonder effects can change with trigger. Scrolling speed can be dynamically changed. The game can track you doing inputs to a beat and even count how many in a row you did. There's just so much crap that is used once and nowhere else. It would probably take a bit of coding to otherwise make. So once the level editor comes out, will the modding scene around Wonder probably go completely insane. Genuinely one of the most moddable games of all time. Oh, and that one search mission. You know which one I mean, it's bullshit. My mother got there. Even having a mindset you can push 5 unlike most players who play so fast, that one level that had that mechanic is over before they can let this knowledge sink in, and would never be able to guess that is possible. I beat that level by reading up the tip and realizing they want me to swap characters to see character specific blocks until I went bloat and still didn't know that you could push that pipe, doing some other methods to get that high.